Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast, where we bridge the gap between the creativity you love and the CEO mindset you need. I'm your host, Nara Salvatore, wedding photographer and business educator. Find full show notes and resources at accidentalceopod.com. Let's get into today's episode. Hey everyone, thank you for listening to the Accidental CEO podcast. I am your host, Nara Salvatore, and I wanted to take today's episode to introduce myself, help you get to know me a little bit better, understand what I'm about, and why we put this podcast together to try to help you. So, I am a multi-business owner. I own 2 wedding photo and video services. I'm a photography educator where I do a lot of coaching, mastermind classes and courses for photographers. I also created an app last year called Timeline Pro. The app is geared towards wedding photographers and wedding planners to help them create beautiful timelines for the wedding day. And I own Airbnbs in Brazil with my brother. And I'm also very busy at home. I have 2 little girls, today age 7 and 10. And I'm a wife to a wonderful, very supportive husband whom I could not do any of these wonderful things without. I currently live in Florida, but when I first came to the United States, I was in Arizona for a couple of years, then moved to Virginia, then now Florida. So I've been to a few states in the country already, had the opportunity to get to know many others through both volleyball and my career as a photographer. I believe that in order for you to really understand where I am today and why I do the things I do, we need to go back many years ago and understand where I come from and what helped build the values that I have today. So I was born and raised in Brazil. I have a family there still, brother and sister, younger brother and sister. I'm actually the oldest. And my dad worked in the bank his entire life. He started as a regular bank worker and worked his way into a management position by the time he retired. And my mom was a homemaker for the majority of her life. We moved a lot growing up, so I relate a lot with military families. When they talk about moving all the time, that was part of my dad's job, was to not stay anywhere for long periods of time, so they wouldn't really create connections with people in town, or people started kind of gathering patterns when it comes to people that do have access to actual money in a bank. So they moved us every 2 to 3 years. We had to go to a new town, and if we didn't move to a new town within that period of time, it was very likely they would either move inside within that same area, or that I would get home from school one day and my mom would have moved the entire furniture around the house and rearranged our bedrooms and rearranged the living room. So I feel like change was a constant thing in my life, and also helped me to see things today in a very positive way when it comes to change. Change is the only constant. I truly believe that, and I'm very good at embracing change and trying to see the positive side of things. So I think part of it comes from that experience of having to move often, having to start over, having this feeling of, things are going to change eventually. You might as well just adapt to it and try to see the positive part of it. So I always played sports growing up. I started playing volleyball when I was 9 years old. I am 6'2", guys, so very tall. Definitely had to put that height to use. And I started playing with an adult team when I was about 12 years old already. So very quickly developed my skills, and I was able to look into volleyball as possibly something to do later on as a career. However, I call myself a pathological learner. I love learning. I love studying. I spend many hours in the library growing up. always loved having good grades. I remember we had encyclopedias at home, and I really enjoy going through it and learning things. So my goal was to always be the first one in my family to get a college degree. I wanted to get that education. That was the way to go. That was the way to do things. However, education in Brazil is something very expensive. It's not something that most people can afford. The way things work there is you have two types of university. You have public universities where you can get your entire degree for free. You're not paying any money for it. Or you have private universities where you can get your entire education by paying every semester, just like we see happening here. A lot of people actually work while they go to universities in Brazil. So there's a lot of night classes that get offered because the majority of people cannot get scholarships or loans like we see here in the US. So a little bit of a different dynamics. The other thing that is different is everybody has to take this national exam to be accepted into the university. Obviously, on the public universities, competition is a lot harder. So you sometimes have 20 to 50 people competing for one spot on that public university when you have a lot less of a competition ratio going on the private universities. Obviously, that makes sense. If you can have your whole degree without having to pay for it, I'm sure people will be raising their hands and trying to get into that spot as soon as possible. These public universities were created to accommodate the part of the population that could not afford education but still had the right to education. But what ended up happening is the people that actually had money were able to pay for prep courses that taught them how to take that test and get really good scores and get into those public universities. So a little bit twisted. The ones that actually have money, have a better education growing up, have better access to the public universities, which is sad. It takes a lot of the spots away from the people that really need it, but it's just the way it works. So very early, I realized my family wasn't going to be able to afford paying for university for me. So it was either try to get into a public university or try to find a way to get a scholarship or some other way to pay for it myself. Since I have my volleyball skills to rely on, I try to use volleyball to get scholarships in order to receive my education. So a very interesting thing happened. At 15, I had the opportunity to start playing professionally for a team. But in order to do that, I had to leave my parents' house and go live by myself. So at age 15, I moved into a studio apartment, living by myself, going to high school still, and playing professional volleyball, preparing to transition into college with a scholarship that was going to be provided by that team. I know it sounds like a crazy story. As a parent now, I definitely question how in the world did my parents let me do that. I was a very responsible teenager, a rule follower, and always did well in school. So obviously they took that into consideration. But again, I was 15, guys, when I left my parents' house and went to live by myself. So think about your kids today or yourself at 15. Do you feel like you could have done that? Or do you feel comfortable enough to let your kids go live by themselves at 15? It was legal, nothing crazy over there when it comes to what they were allowed to do. And there I went every day to high school, woke up, never missed a class, graduated, and on to college we go. So I want to talk a little bit about the living situation during that time of my life, because I think, again, it tells you a little bit of the story or the things that I went through and things that I learned that I'm sure helped form who I am today. This little studio apartment was by a church, and this beautiful little church had a clock that went off every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day. So imagine trying to sleep, and every 15 minutes, you have those big bells of a clock from a church go on. That's probably when my non-sleeping habits started, let's be honest. Being able to sleep or just function with something going off in your ears every 15 minutes was a very interesting form of torture, I would say. And I could not wait to get out of there. I cannot even, just thinking about it now, it gives me anxiety. It was not a fun time. I had this little mini fridge that was my refrigerator, and I had a little cooktop stove where I made a few meals, and I had to wash my clothes by hand in the bathroom sink. I had no washer and dryer, and then I hung them to dry in this little rack outside of my window. And that was my life during high school until I went to college. So again, some lessons learned there, some resilience skills were born at that time. We definitely did not have enough money for food at that time, even though the team said, we're going to take care of your daughter. We're going to give her this apartment and everything's going to be great. At the end of the day, I had one meal a day that was paid by them. And I had to figure out how to do everything else. I did not want to reach out to my parents and ask for money. I could have. They would have helped. But to me, that was a sign of failure. That was a sign of me not being able to hold my end on this thing that I begged them to let me do, which was to stay behind and play for the team when they were leaving in a different state at that time. So I just sucked it up and got through it. I had very kind people that helped me with meals. At school, they would give me some meals to take home. I had a lot of parents of other players that I play with that would invite me over for dinner or have some leftovers. So I have had angels in my life for many, many years. They definitely have helped me through that part of my life. By the way, my parents still don't know that happened. Hopefully they will not listen to this. They don't speak English anyway, so let's hope we can keep this secret, just you and me. So that happened. Start going into university. I actually got into psychology school, which is what I wanted to do. I was fascinated by psychology, wanted to work with people and be a therapist. But obviously, besides having a partial scholarship from the volleyball team that I was working with, I needed a little bit more money to pay for transportation to and from the university because it was in the town next to us. It wasn't in the same town that we were living, so I needed to pay for transportation and obviously books and things like that. So that's when I got a job at a photography studio, which is really interesting because for many, many years I forgot that I had that job for a few months. I was the assistant to this amazing photographer lady. She was very skillful. She taught me a lot about lighting, how to measure lighting and how to prep your clients for photo shoots. And I remember that's actually where I was, guys, when 9/11 happened. I remember watching all of that on a little TV on the back of the photography studio. So somehow kind of forgot that for a few years of my life afterwards, that I even have some experience working in a photography studio. Completely wiped that off my memory, which came back later, talking to a friend, rediscovered the connection that I had with photography way, way back when. So started going into psychology school, loved it, studied for a year and a half into that major. And then out of the sudden, there was some changes with the connection between the university and the volleyball team. And that scholarship opportunity ended, which means my opportunity to go to college also ended. I wasn't able to pay for it myself fully, so I had to withdraw from all the classes and drop out of college at that time. So could no longer pursue my dream of becoming a psychologist. And so I started to look for other opportunities in other places where I could play and still have a scholarship to go to college. That was my mission. I was going to get a degree. I was going to be successful. And I was just going to use volleyball as the vehicle to get me to that point. So moved to a different state, started playing for another team The only problem was the university that they had a connection with did not offer a psychology as a major. So I had to change and pick something else to study, and that's when I chose physical therapy. So physical therapy is a bachelor's degree in Brazil. You go through school for 4 years and you leave with your physical therapy degree. It's a little bit different than it is here in the US, which I found out many, many years later, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So start studying for physical therapy, really loved it. There's definitely some aspects of psychology that go into that, but also a little bit more of the exercise and a little bit more dynamic, which again was part of my life as an athlete. So was loving life, going through PT school. And then the same thing happened again. There were some political changes in town. The partnership between the team and the university was broken up, and there goes my scholarship again. Found myself in the same spot, having gone through training for a whole year now, 1.5 years of psychology, 1 year of physical therapy, back to square zero, not even square one. What do I do now? Do I continue to try to pursue this? Do I try to just find a regular job? Decisions. Packed all my stuff, got in a bus, and decided to go back to my hometown. That's where I knew the majority of people growing up, so I still had some connections there. And I decided it was time to give up volleyball and just focus on getting a regular job and just continue my life from there. So I moved back to my hometown where I was born. My parents were not living there. They were still in a different place. So I moved in with my grandpa and helped him in the house while I was looking for a job. Many job interviews, applied for all kinds of things, different jobs in the healthcare industry, in the retail industry, all kinds of places. Nothing was really happening. No job was being landed, no movement. Hopes were starting to dry out. Really was starting to get sad about it and trying to figure out what to do next when I got a call from my brother who was living with my parents at the time. And he said, hey, I got connected with the guys who run the volleyball team here in town. And they actually remember you. They remember you playing against them a few years ago. They remember how good you are. And they said they will be willing to give you a try if you want to come and try out to play for the team. And I was like, what? They remember me from I don't know how many years ago? And he said, yes, come on, come back home, come play over here and just try. Like nothing is happening there. Might as well just give it a try. So there I go, pack all my bags again and move now back to my parents' house. After all these years of being away, I went to try out for this volleyball team. The hard part was I haven't been playing for many months now, so my conditioning and skills have definitely declined some. So when I tried out for this team, I swear, guys, it was awful. I was not good. I would not have hired me. Things were not pretty. I was out of shape. Just not being in that environment makes a huge difference when you do that professionally and you step away from it. Your body definitely misses it, and you can get out of shape fairly fast in a few months of not doing anything. So they were very kind though. We had a meeting afterwards and they said, really, we know that you're good. We know what you can do. We've seen you. We've seen your potential. We know that you haven't played for a long time. We know you're out of shape. We are able to see through all of that, and we're willing to give you a chance. So they offer me a job anyways, somehow. Again, angels looking out for me. They offered me a job, and there's where I started playing again as a professional volleyball player. All day long, practicing, weightlifting, conditioning, more practicing. The great thing was I was able to move back with my family during that time. The apartment where the other girls lived was actually a block away from my parents' house. So I was able to still be connected with the girls, but lived back with my parents, which helped me to save some more money. So if I wasn't utilizing the apartment for the team, I was able to get a little bit more on my paycheck, and it helped me to just save money in general. Obviously, eating with my parents and doing my laundry and all of that were all things that helped me save money. So what I did is I put all that money away as much as I could for the months that I played for that team. Again, thinking about how can I put this money together so I can go back to school. Really wanted to go back to studying, wanted to go back to getting that degree. So there I was, playing volleyball again, trying to save some money, waiting for the next thing. This volleyball player, a setter from that used to live in the town that I was playing at, was back home from summer vacation. She was then living in the US, playing for a university in Arizona, and then just came back during her summer break to just practice with us, make sure she didn't get out of shape. And then we started talking about, being abroad, studying in the United States and the opportunities and everything. And that just lit up my eyes, guys. I was like, what do you mean I can go play, I can learn English, I can be in a different country and get the education that I really crave for? So we started talking about opportunities. I told her I was definitely interested in potentially coming over to the US and playing volleyball. So she gave me the contact information of a coach in Kentucky. So Columbia, Kentucky was the school. In order for me to talk to this coach, there was a lot of obstacles, obviously, in the way of that. So at that time, we did not have a computer in my house. So I had to wait for my dad to be done with work at the bank. And I'll go to the bank after work hours, and I'll sit and use his computer. And this dictionary that I purchased, it was an English-Portuguese dictionary. And I would try to put a sentence together to write emails to this coach and talk about potentially coming to the US and play volleyball. I will give anything to be able to see those emails right now. I would love to read them. I'm sure they were hilarious. I'm sure they made no sense at all. I remember taking so long to try to put a sentence together, the page would expire. Things would be very slow and difficult, but I was determined to make this connection and try to get a scholarship to come play in the US. So a few days of that back and forth. And then one of the days I sent an email and it bounced back. So at that time, when you got enough emails on your inbox and your inbox got full, it was kind of like our voicemail inboxes are now. You got full, it would just bounce back. You wouldn't get emails anymore until you clean up your inbox a little bit. So that email bounced back. And then I looked at a sheet of paper that she gave me, and it had 2 emails in there. It had that person's email, and it was CC to somebody else who I didn't know what CC was at that time, and I didn't know what the email title was Coach 28 VB for volleyball at yahoo.com. I still remember the email. And I said, I'm just going to try to send it to that email. Maybe that's just another email to the same coach and I can get hold of him that way. So I sent my email to that email address. Well, that ended up in Arizona. That was the coach at the college that the girl who gave me all the information was playing at. So that was a coach in Arizona, Coach James Finley. And he contacted her and said, hey, what is this email? What is this girl talking about? What's going on? And she said, she told him who I was, that I was trying to get to the US to play volleyball. And I honestly do not know until this day everything she told him about me. Obviously, she'd seen me play because we practiced together. And he said, have she signed up with Kentucky yet? And the girl said, no. He's like, well, I want to see what this is about. I want to talk to her. So we started scheduling calls. He would call my parents' house, and I would have a girl there that knew how to speak English, and she would try to translate the conversation back and forth. And after a couple of conversations, without ever seeing me play, he offered me a full scholarship to go play in Arizona. Talk about dreams come through. That was so exciting. It was, again, everything that I wanted. I was going to be able to go to school and play volleyball. Obviously, I was going to be in a different country and try to speak a language that I didn't know. But I was excited. I was ecstatic. I could not wait to go. And then I obviously had to jump through a few hurdles to get there. He offered me a full scholarship. It was already a little bit late in the semester, so decisions had to be done very fast. I missed the first, 2 to 3 weeks of class in the fall. When I came over the first year, I had to put some money together, sell some jewelry that I had, borrow some money, and figured out how to get myself to Arizona, and finally got there with $30 in my pocket, guys. That's all I had. I had $30 and I had no English in my vocabulary. I probably knew about 10 words that could not be put together in a sentence. And that's how I ended up in the United States. I sent the wrong email to the wrong person because I didn't know English, and ended up over here with a full scholarship to college. Talk about a crazy story and being destined to be somewhere. That was definitely me. I tell people all the time, I was born in the wrong place. I should have been born here. This is where I feel at home. This is where I feel comfortable. And I'm so glad that that mistake happened. If you want to call it a mistake. And, I feel like I was destined to be here. And I'm so happy that that happened. So I went to college in Arizona. That's where I met some other friends from Brazil who were also playing sports there. I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet these other Brazilians. They know how to speak English. They're going to help me out. Only to find out we were all on the same boat. None of us knew how to speak the language. We were all there just working hard and trying to figure things out. That's where I met my husband, Nando. He was a basketball player in the same college. So that's how we met and started dating a few months after we met. So definitely, again, destined to be here. A funny story, side story too. Nando and I have been in the same location in Brazil. We've played a tournament in the same town at the same time, and we've never met, even though we're from completely different states in Brazil. And we met, and then we ended up meeting in Arizona a few years later. So cross paths again later in our life. So we were actually ready to be together. If we've met at the time where we were in the same place, we probably wouldn't have even looked at each other. We had significant others. We were at different times, different places in our lives, and then ended up meeting again in the United States. So very, very fun story there. So had a scholarship offer from there, full scholarship. It was a junior college in Yuma, Arizona Western College. Had the opportunity to learn as much as possible there. Had a coach that was very focused on the academics and making sure that you are a student athlete, with student coming first, which was definitely something that I appreciated a lot. And again, gave me the opportunity to learn the language. It's a town and neighbor to Mexico, so a lot of Spanish speaking people, which was super helpful in the beginning to somebody like me who only spoke Portuguese. So very helpful to have somebody that could kind of at least understand you and help. So it was the perfect little place to start my journey in the US, I feel like. After 2 years of playing there, we were very lucky to have scholarship offers from literally all over the US, guys, to continue our last 2 years of college. A lot of great universities, Ohio State, universities in Florida, universities in Oregon and Arizona. I mean, literally all over. almost every state. We had an opportunity to choose where to go, which I was really thankful for. I did a few site visits. And during one of my site visits to Virginia, I found out that that team specifically was in transition and didn't have a head coach. At that time, I really liked the place. I specifically liked that they had a physical therapy school that was in the top 10 in the country at the time. Again, that's what I was interested in. Volleyball was my vehicle to get to my degree. I was really excited about that. And they were during the recruiting visit, they asked me, what can we do for you to come play here? Like, we really want you to be part of our team. What do we need to do? And I said, first of all, why you're not recruiting my friend from Brazil? She's an amazing player. She's better than me. We're trying to find a place where we can go together. And they were like, oh, she's available. She hasn't signed up with, so-and-so yet. And I was like, no, we're really trying to go together. And they're like, absolutely, we would have both of you. And I was like, okay, I like that. And then I asked them if they would be willing to bring my coach as well from Arizona. One, I knew he was interested in moving. And two, I knew that he would allow me to focus on academics, that I wouldn't have to learn a whole new system from a whole new person again. It would just be a comfortable transition to a different place, a different town, having somebody that I've learned to trust and that has been a great guide to me. So there it happened. They hired my coach from Arizona, and they brought me and my other friend from Brazil, and we moved into VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. That's where I played for my last 2 years of college. And talking about an amazing transition, it was a great place to be at. We went to the NCAAs for the first time in that school's history with the volleyball team on my first year there. So we were definitely excited to be elevating the team, bringing that, just the happiness of being able to do that for a college that has put a lot of effort into having us there. That was a great place to be. I also very quickly discovered that physical therapy was a graduate degree level, and then I was going to have some prerequisites in certain classes that I had to have in order for me to apply to PT school. So again, my thought process about having my coach there is that I knew he was going to let me do what I needed to do to apply for PT school. And that means I had to take a lot of extra classes in order to qualify to do that. So while most people take about 12 to 15 credits a semester, I had semesters where I took 28 credits, guys. 28 credits, and I'll take 15 credits in the summer. I was working hard. I was studying hard, I was playing hard, and I was not going to let that opportunity go away. So graduated from undergrad, and then it came time to apply for graduate school. Well, graduate school applications cost money, and I remember I had to put $500 together to secure my seat if I got accepted to the school that I applied for. So I applied for PT school. I received the letter saying that I was accepted, which was amazing, but the sentence that came after that kind of made my heart drop. I needed to have $500 to secure my seat by a certain date. So there I go again, trying to figure it out. What do I do? How do I put that money together? As an international student in a college, you're not allowed to work outside of campus. In the jobs that you do have on campus, you're only allowed to work up to 20 hours a week. Obviously, very minimal wage. And we couldn't even work a lot at that time. Obviously, we're in the middle of the season. There's limited amount of opportunities for that. So what I did is I did a lot of tutoring. I did paid tutoring for one of our exercise physiology classes, a ton of that. I was knitting scarves. I would sell scarves. I would clean people's houses. I did everything I could to put money together I remember painting. I painted houses. I worked in offices. I did some volleyball teaching and coaching and all kinds of things that I could to put that money together. And when the day came around, I was able to put my $500 down and secure my spot. And I remember being so proud of it. I had other people there with their parents, and people were signing checks, and I just had this stack of bills. Probably got some looks when I put that down in the counter and said, here's my money to secure my spot. I am ready to go. PT school started. So there we go, graduate school, which means we are in class from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day for the next 3 years. Started with anatomy class, which I absolutely loved, fell in love with it, loved the dissection. I loved cadaver anatomy. I actually came back the next semester and helped remove brains from the cadavers for the neurology class that we're going to have. So your girl loves that kind of stuff. Definitely, absolutely love that. As much as I love PT school, I had to figure out how to still pay for my rent and pay for my food and everything. I had to actually get a co-signer to get loans for physical therapy school. And because I was not a citizen at that time, I had to get a citizen to co-sign my loans. So imagine having to ask somebody who it's not your family member, is not somebody that owes you anything, to co-sign thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in student loans that you could potentially just go back to your country, disappear on them, and leave them with all these loans to pay. It's not an easy thing to ask people. Again, I had very wonderful people in my life that believed in me and they were willing to do that for me, that I'm very grateful for. Could not have done all the things that I did without their help. And again, so grateful for all these amazing people that are in my life. So got the loans, went to PT school. I had 3 jobs during PT school, even though they told us we were not allowed to work. But your girl had to pay for food, had to pay for rent, because I only took the minimal amount of loans that I needed to pay for school, because again, I understood there was somebody's name on those loans, and I didn't want to abuse it. I want to make sure that I just paid for everything myself. Went through PT school, had to continue to work on those 3 jobs to get to it. Didn't have money to buy books. I used to go to the anatomy lab at night and use the anatomy books that we used during the day. They were kind of nasty. I had to use gloves to flip through the pages. Those were my study books until the chair of the department found out that I didn't have books or money for books. And out of the sudden, the teachers started to give me their copy of their instructor books. So every class, I will quietly get a book from one of our teachers that would understood my situation. And those guys helped me go through PT school. They did not only teach me what they needed to teach me for me to be a physical therapist, they did everything they could to help me through it. I was the babysitter and the dog sitter and the house sitter for the department. Every time anyone went on a vacation, I was hired to watch their house, to watch their pet, and that's how they would help to give me money, to have money for books and other things that I needed. I worked as a graduate assistant for the athletic department at night, and I worked on the weekends at the hospital as a physical therapy tech. So I would help other physical therapists take care of their patients, which helped me, again, learn as I was going through school. Finally graduated and started to look into places to work for. I was really interested in residency and fellowship training at that time. So decided that Florida was the place to go. They had a great residency training in Jacksonville. So that's what I wanted to do. started working here, went through orthopedic residency training, and then moved into manual therapy fellowship. I have the kind of training in physical therapy that probably less than 1 or 2% of the profession has. It's very specialized. I have dual board certification in both sports and orthopedics. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy with board certifications. I was presenting at conferences. I was publishing articles. I built programs. I built residency programs. I was teaching at the university level. I was happy. Nothing needed to change. I found my calling. I found what I wanted to do in life until things changed. There was a change in leadership. There was a change in how I felt towards what I was doing in the company and the mission, vision, values. I now had 2 kids that I wanted to spend more time with. And it just led me through the mental exercise of thinking, if I wasn't doing this anymore, what would I be doing? What would be my path in life? And it really came down to 3 things. My options were I would go back to med school and become a surgeon. Like I told you, I love all the anatomy and the dissection and all that kind of stuff. And I love the chaos of that OR and having to, deal with that kind of stuff. That was an option. Interior designing was another option, which is, again, very different. And then photography was my third option. I had a camera that I got from when my second daughter was born. I wanted to learn how to use it. I wanted to document our life a little bit more. And I decided, you know what? I can start on this photography thing right away. I can start learning on the side, start studying this, and I can just make it happen. So option 3 is what I went with, and I wanted to start that as on the side as my side hustle. I took my first family session and literally start charging from the second session on. I shot my first wedding 4 months after I picked up a camera and got paid $500 to do that. So I was so excited. That was so much money at that time, $500 for a wedding. I was ecstatic. I was so happy I got to do that. Because I had a lot of the business skills and the business mindset from running programs and running clinics and building standardization of practice and things like that on my physical therapy job, I felt like I was able to grow my photography practice really, really fast. I shot over 100 sessions in the first year of my photography career, and I was making 6 figures by year 2, which was during the pandemic, guys. So in 2020, when the world was falling apart, I was able to make 6 figures with my side hustle. This was still a side hustle at that time. It was transitioning out of physical therapy, but it was still doing a little bit of both. In year 3, I was able to scale to a team and add a second brand and add video to our services, continue to grow to multiple 6 figures. I launched Timeline Pro, which is my app, from a need that I saw while I was shooting weddings. But one thing that I was missing was to be an educator. Being in physical therapy was something that I really loved. And part of that love came from the ability to be always teaching. I always had students. I trained physical therapists. I taught at university level. So those things were missing in my photography life and my creative life. So I was itching to get back into education, to get back into sharing my knowledge. And that's how PhotoBiz education basically started, from my passion to share knowledge and help people kind of thrive and go through the same process that I went through 3 times faster without having to commit the same mistakes, without having to struggle. And I really love and thrive in one-on-one coaching. Those are the things that I love doing. Again, it's been part of my life for a long time. And that brings us to the Accidental CEO podcast. That's my way to reach out to more people, to share some of my knowledge, but also my guests' knowledge, the things that they went through, the tips and tricks that help them find their success and be thriving on the environment that they chose to be as a CEO. So, that was my accidental CEO story for you. I know it was long. I know I took you way, way, way back, but I feel like even some of the people that are in my life right now don't know my full story. And I feel like understanding all the things that I went through growing up, leaving parents out as 15 years old, coming to a different country with nothing and building everything that I built, help you understand a little bit better my mindset and how I believe that people can be successful if they put the time and the work and pay attention to, processes and procedures. I'm a believer that you can be successful if you believe you can be successful. Whether you believe it or not, you are right. Mindset is a huge thing. Hard work is a huge thing. In sticking to your values, to me, is also a huge thing. Whew, that was a long story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope to have you here listening to our guests and learning from people and hopefully maybe even sharing some of your own story and your adventures and your successes and your struggles with us, because we are all in this together. This can be, being in the creative world can be a little lonely sometimes. And I want you guys to feel that the Accidental CEO community is going to be a place for you to come, hang out, and learn and share and thrive together. All right, guys, that was my story. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next episode with my first guest. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk soon. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nara Salvatore, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.